Smartalock admin training video. What we're going to do in this video is cover some of the basic things that you need to understand about the admin side of the system, starting from logging in, some general principles on the UI for actually using the portal, and then work through a few of the most common admin tasks, such as administrating users, changing the policy for desks and lockers, creating bookings on behalf of people, creating team leaders, and running some basic reports. So the first thing you'll notice is that we log in via a web interface and to a URL. So the URL that you'll log into won't be test.floorsense.nz, rather it'll be most likely customer.floorsense.com.au or customer.smartalock.com. Your admin credentials will be provided by your reseller along with this URL. So on this test system, I'll just log in, and the first thing that you'll notice once we log in is that we get taken to a landing page where we can see some desks. Depending on what your system is configured with, whether you have desks or lockers or both desks and lockers, then if you have desks, you'll land first on the desk landing page and you'll land on the first building and the first floor in that building. So this little hamburger on the left here, we can click on this and navigate to these are different buildings. And we've got multiple floors. We can have many floors per building. In this case, we've just got one building per floor. So we could navigate to a different one by clicking on this drop down here. When we're looking at this interface, we can see all of the desks on the floor. And if we want, we can filter on different neighborhoods if they're set up. We can turn on different neighborhoods and turn them off if we want to see the status of just certain neighborhoods, or we can deselect all and we can see all of them. We also have the ability to show the numbers, the desk numbers assigned. Those are pretty small, but we do have a little zoom in function there that allows us to zoom in and see those numbers, and we can just push that button to turn them off. We also see that we've got a total desk count, and then we've got some color coding that gets applied to each desk. At the moment, at this time, we've got a few different colors. We've got the white with the blue border. That means it's a desk that's free and it's also clean. We've got a red desk, which is reserved to a user. We've got a green desk, which means that it's free and we're either not tracking cleaning on it or it's been used since it was last cleaned. And then down here, you can see these ones with the stripy lines on them. They've been disabled, so people won't be able to check into or book those ones, or in fact check into them if they're in that disabled state. On this floor plan, we don't see any at the moment, but there's another color which is the orange color, and that a desk goes orange if it's currently occupied by someone, but we don't know who it is because that user hasn't checked in. If your system has lockers, then you may be able to also click on locker banks to navigate to see the lockers that would be available at that bank. So this is just a demo system, so there's only 2 lockers on that one that we clicked on. But if we navigate to another locker bank, there might be a few more. I can't remember which one. Yeah, that one. This one's got more lockers. And the color coding for lockers is simpler. We've got red ones, they will be reserved to a particular user, and we've got green ones which are free to be allocated to someone else. The other thing that you'll notice along the top is that, or typically the way that the UI works is that when you're performing administrative tasks, then you work from left to right. So if you want to perform an action on a desk, then if you select what building and what floor the desk is on, and then you can click on the desk, and then you'll notice that an action panel appears on the right hand side of the screen, and then you can perform some actions on that desk. The actions in this case is that we can make a booking on behalf of someone else. We can check the event log to see history of what's going on that desk, or we've got some other administrative actions, like we can change what desk type it belongs to, what desk group or neighborhood it belongs to, and then a few other things. If it's a puck that's got a speaker in it, then we can sound the speaker or flash the light. We can also mark the desk out of service so that it can't be checked into for social distancing or because it's physically damaged or needs some repair, or we can mark it manually as clean if we're doing administratively wanting to mark disks as clean as opposed to using the cleaner card function. So one of the other things you'll notice on this side panel is that the type of the work point has been recorded here, sits down workstation, and we've got this tags area down here, which in this case is blank. One of the first admin tasks that customers typically do is to allocate types and add additional metadata to each work point. And we've got a way that we can do that relatively quickly. And then the other thing that admins will typically do is create neighborhoods, which we call desk groups. So I'll take you through how to do those steps now. So in terms of creating types, well, we've created a few already on this test system, but how we can edit those is by desks, desk types. And you can see that we've got type A through to type J, and each of those types has been given a name. And typically we use types to capture a particular flavor of desk hardware, i.e. here we've got sit stand 180 fixed height desks, that type of thing. And we use hashtags to further augment those. So if we wanted to add window or quiet or some other metadata to further refine end users' ability to search for a type of work point, then we use the hashtag in addition to the desk type. We don't use types or tags to capture what neighborhood they belong to. For example, we wouldn't set up sales or marketing in here. They get captured under desk groups, which is our concept of neighborhoods or tribes in the system. So at the moment we've set up 7 different types of work point, and we will have mapped those to the desks on a floor plan. But I'll take you through how we can do that relatively quickly using the desk bulk configuration. So this is a floor plan view that allows you to toggle desks on and off and then apply some policy or action to it. So let's go to a new floor and we can turn that off so we've navigated to it, and let's select all of these desks by toggling them on. And at the moment all of these desks belong to a default type, although we all type A, which means that they are sit stands. So in this action panel on the right hand side, again working from left to right, then we can click to select, and we will move these into, they're all fixed height of the sit stand workstations actually. So we'll click on that and you can see that that type has been applied to those groups of desks. If we wanted to apply some hashtags to perhaps these desks here, which are all by the window, then we could add a tag down here, type window, hit enter, and it has added the hashtag window to those desks, such that if an end user is searching for a sit stand desk that's by the window, they would enter sit stand and then window, and they would highlight these desks as meeting their criteria so long as they weren't already in use. So now we've applied that, if we go back and have a look at our desks, that floor, then if we click on this desk here, we can see that it's a sit stand workstation. It says type A here, that updates in a minute to say sit stand workstation as well, and that we've got this hashtag window here. And if we click on this one, then there's no window tag here, but it's a sit stand workstation. That just allows not only users to filter on the types of desks and with additional metadata to help choose the space that they want to work out, but it also flows through to our analytics and reporting to report on the occupancy rate and the reservation rate for different types of work point. So the next thing that you'll also want to set up is the neighborhoods or desk groups. So to do that, we go to groups, desk groups, and it's here that we could add, we've got a bunch of neighborhoods already set up on this demo system, but if we wanted to create a new one, then it's simply a case of typing a name. Facilities management neighborhood, add that one, and it's now created. It's number 14. We can apply policy to a group of desks or a neighborhood. So If we we've clicked on policies now. If we click on facilities management, we can set the policy that applies to this neighbourhood, the maximum number of desks. Do we allow people to book on the fly or in an ad hoc basis? Do we allow people's bookings to auto-release? For example, if they're away from their desk for too long. In this case, we don't. 0 means it's turned off. Do we allow people to pre-book desks in this neighbourhood? And if they pre-book a desk for, say, at 9 AM, how long have they got before their booking is automatically cancelled? And by default, they get 60 minutes. So if they were booked for 9 AM, then they have to check in at the desk before 10 AM in order to keep their booking. And then these settings allow you to change whether the default booking type just goes for a certain number of hours, or i.e. if you swipe on with your swipe card, it automatically goes for 480 minutes, or if you set this to end of day, then these settings are ignored except for the end of day setting, which means 6 PM. So if you swiped on or booked it with your phone in this neighbourhood, then you're going to have the desk for the whole day and your booking will naturally finish at 6 PM. This final box down here under the desk policy allows you to restrict the access or the ability to book desks within this facilities management neighbourhood to just certain groups of users. So we've got a few groups of users set up on the system at the moment. The default group, the sales, IT security and IT support. So we could just tick that only IT security and IT support are allowed to book in to these desks, but in this case we're going to allow anyone to book into these desks. So we'll click on update and that's updated. But that's created the desk group or neighbourhood, but there's still actually no desks inside this neighbourhood. So again, if we want to put desks into this neighbourhood, we go back to this bulk configuration, we select our floor, and let's choose those same desks that we did earlier. And under this actions panel here, we're going to move them into the facilities management group. And so it's done all those. So now those desks will belong to the facilities management team, or neighbourhood rather. So if I click on one, the desk group now is facilities management. So now those desks belong to the facilities management desk group. They will inherit the policy that we set for that desk group or neighbourhood. The other place that it shows up is where we look at the analytics. If we take a look at desk analytics, we click on a particular floor, then down here you'll see that now we're tracking the occupancy rates for the facilities management group of desks or neighbourhood, and we're also tracking the occupancy and reservation rates based on types of desks. So those are the sort of some high-level reports that you can get on an entire building, the occupancy rates, the rates for the floor that we've clicked on, and then a breakdown based on neighbourhood and type of work point. There's some more detailed reporting that we can get to by going to analytics reports, which we'll go through in a little bit. The next thing that I want to cover really is the users tab. Getting users into the Floorsense system, there's a couple of different ways. If you've only got very few users, then you can add users individually via this add user dialog, but in most cases you've got too many users to add in via that method. You can see here that we've got a lot of users in the system, and the way that we add users in bulk is via the back end, which is available via settings and then system configuration. It's going to ask you to log in again with the credentials, and then we go to users, user DB, and here we've got the ability to import a CSV file. Now, the format of this CSV file containing all of the users, the easiest way to understand what it looks like is to actually export it first. So if you do an export and then we open this file, then we can see here some of the columns that are in the file. And so the columns that we need in any import file, this column user type, it's either user or cleaner. So in most cases we set this to user, and then we need the name field. The default PIN field we don't need. If you don't provide a PIN number, then the system will generate a PIN number automatically. The reference field refers to any external database reference or key from your source system that you want to provide. It's not a mandatory field like the default PIN, it's not mandatory. Mobile key is not used now, but it's preserved for historical older Floorsense systems that did use that. Expiry is a field where you can specify a date when the user record will expire. For example, if you've got contractors on 3 months, 6 months, then we can configure them to automatically expire. The cards field is the CSN number on the user's swipe card. Now, that CSN number you might not know. This field again is not compulsory, and I'll go through in a minute a way that we can capture quite quickly end users' CSN numbers from their building access cards. The res fixed and res ad hoc column, again, none of this is mandatory, but these refer to lockers. So res fixed is a fixed locker allocation. Res ad hoc is an ad hoc locker allocation. Again, not compulsory. And yeah, it's just if they're in the export file, then you can see that this user has got 2 lockers, L19 and L02. Description, another non-compulsory field. This is in this case where we've put in perhaps their user group or some division that they work with within the company. This is a searchable field in other parts of the application. If you wanted to find all of the accounting assistant 2s, for example, then you could type that into a search field to find where those users currently are sitting. The email field. Now, this is actually not compulsory, but this is very useful if you are going to do an import because it allows you to send out an activation email to end users. And then the group field, again, not compulsory, is if you want to put your users into a specific user group. And as we saw on the policy that can be applied to desk groups or neighbourhoods, it's possible to restrict access to certain neighbourhoods just to certain user groups. And so this group column is where you would do a bulk import to put a group of users into a certain group name. Finally, this book fixed or BK fixed field is used for desks. So BK is for desks, res is for lockers. So booked fixed for fixed allocations of desks to users that never going to change and they never have to check into a desk. It's just that's their desk forever. So just to recap, the columns that are compulsory are really just the name column, and then the other one that's useful is the email column. So when you're doing an import, you want the user type, the name, and the email column, and the rest of the stuff is optional, and you can add it in later via the front-end admin, or you can do an export and add it in yourself via a later incremental update. So once you've generated that file, then you can use this import wizard to import it. You select whether the import type is going to be an incremental import or it's going to be a full import. Now, an incremental import is not going to replace the existing user database. It's just going to look at the file you've provided and add new records or amend existing records with new information that you've provided about those existing users. If you choose a full import, then it's going to completely wipe the user database and any reservations or desk bookings that those users have and replace it with whatever's in your file. So use the full import feature with a lot of caution. To navigate back to the admin front end, you just push the little button here in the top left corner. And just on users, so there is a much more efficient way of creating users, and that's using our single sign-on service. So with single sign-on, you can automatically generate the users in the Floorsense system as they log in using your own organization's credentials. So for example, here, if an end user goes to my.smartalock.com, or there's another one, my.floorsense.com.au, they all end up in the same page, and they click this button down the bottom, log in using my organization's credentials. And then if you're set up for single sign-on, then if you log in with a domain that we recognize, then you'll be pushed to your IDP or your identity provider for authentication. This is a single step that once you're set up, then the end user is able to book a desk and that type of thing on their site. But the process of logging in via single sign-on will also create a user automatically in this database. So For example, I've already done this one before, but this user simon@getconsole.com was created with this name, which has come from Active Directory, and then we've subsequently added a description field and put them into a group. But in terms of automatically creating the user database on the Floorsense system, the single sign-on option is the least administrative effort on your part if it's set up, and it's also very secure in that we never see any of your end user passwords, and your end user never has to set a password on their account in order to log into the app. So the last thing to discuss about users is once you've created them, you can make some users be team leaders and have delegate authority over other users. So for example, this user, simon@amexcapital.com, if I click on this user record, then we can see their current locker reservations, users' current desk bookings. But down here in this bottom part of the action tab is allow this user to book on behalf of other users. And I've set up a number of users that Simon Amex Capital can book on behalf of. If I want to add another user to this list, or perhaps there was none on there, then I can just start typing someone's name in the system and then click on them, and it will successfully add them to the list of users that simon@amexcapital.com can book on behalf for. If I want to revoke the authority, then I can just click the X there and it'll ask me to confirm, and now that user was removed from this user's ability to delegate. And how team leaders actually book desks on behalf of their delegates is via the my.smartalock or my.floorsense end user web portal. So I've logged in here as simon@amexcapital.com, and here's my lockers and my desks. And if I want to switch to another user that I'm a team leader for, then I just select them from this drop down at the top, asks me to confirm, and then it's going to switch to this user, Adorn, which is one of my team members. She's currently got a locker and she's currently got a desk, so I can release that booking if I want to give her a different one or make a booking for something else. And if I want to book a desk for Adorn, then again, just like I would if I was doing it for myself, I choose one on the floor plan, 4 hours, and maybe start that at 5 o'clock this afternoon, booking for Adorn, create booking. So that desk is now being reserved for Adorn. And so when she logs in on her phone, or if she logged into her copy of her version of my Smartalock or my floorsense.com.au, then she would see that desk is there for her if she doesn't want it, and she can release it herself and make her own booking. The last part of this admin introduction is back on the main admin page, where we're going to talk a little bit about the reporting side of the interface. So we touched briefly on the basic desk analytics that you can get from this front end part of admin portal, but most of the reports are in the back end, where we click on the reports button and we're taken to this reports page. It defaults to the locker reports, that's just historic, but all of the Floorsense and occupancy and reservation reports are under these 5 here. So if we start with the monthly PDF reports, then this allows you to select by building or via the just a floor and over a certain period to get occupancy and reservation rates, and then it breaks those results down by neighbourhood and also by type, and these you can download or print out as a nice PDF. You download them, you can get the raw data as well, breakdown by neighbourhood, occupancy rates and reservation rates. The hourly/weekly one goes back a selected number of weeks to show you the change in occupancy over those weeks. If you click on a day, then it'll show you what happens on an average Thursday or Friday in terms of peak and actual occupancy, and we can look at occupancy or we can look at reservations or both. The occupancy heat maps by floor allows you to choose a date range, choose a floor, and then it sort of color codes each desk like a heat map in terms of its relative popularity or occupancy. So the lighter the color, I think they start going red after a while. The higher the level of average occupancy that's seen over the course of the working day, and the dark green ones are generally very low occupancy. So that can drive decisions or can pose questions to facilities as to why certain spaces are being used while others aren't. The time machine report allows you to select a day in the past and a floor and visually see the change in occupancy and reservations over the course of the day. So you just grab this thing and this slider and can scrub along starting from 7 a.m. and going through till the evening. And then if you stop somewhere and mouse over, then you'll see who should start resolving who is in using that space. Yeah, so we can see that one was used by Ginny at that point on 9:45 a.m. on the 2nd of March. Most of the reports, however, for Floorsense, the ones where you can download nice Excel spreadsheets and do further analysis, are in these per user spreadsheet reports. And this page takes a little while to load, and there's a group of reports starting with the historical reservations by user. This reports on over for the selected period and optionally a floor or a neighbourhood or group of desks. These pop-ups will appear in a sec. You can return all of the reservations by user, and that does include their pre-booked and not confirmed ones. If you want to see who's pre-booking desks but is failing to consistently turn up, then this is the one to run. This one will let you then drill down historical reservations by selected user. Will just let you select an individual user and then select a time period and get all of the desk reservations, including their pre-booked ones that they didn't show up for, in a single report tailored for just that user. The Unoccupied Desks report is going to find all the desks that have never seen any occupancy for the selected period. That's useful to find spaces that aren't being used at all. And the Booked Unoccupied Desk report shows you spaces that have been booked by users but they've failed to ever show up for them. It's going to find spaces that are particularly unpopular. The contact tracing report is useful to find who's been sitting near who. So for a selected user or users and for a selected period, we can download a report, start typing the user that you're interested in, and then put in a time period that you'd like to know where that person's been sitting, and then you can download the report. I'm not going to do it now, and that will find all of the users that have been sitting near this particular user during this time period. There's a couple of clean desks reports. This one is going to return right now which desks are clean and when were they last cleaned. And there's another one a little bit further down, the clean versus used desk report, which is going to return a similar table but formatted in a way that you could give to a cleaner and go, these are all the used desks that need spot cleaning right now, and these are the ones that you don't need to bother cleaning because no one's sat at them since they were last cleaned. We do have a feature in the end user app where a user can mark that they are working from home, and if users choose to do that, then we can report on it. This report here, the home versus office by selected users, so you can find either for all users or just for selected users the percentage of time that they're being spending in the office versus the percentage they're spending at home, and this report does the same thing. And then finally we've got some more sort of inventory style. If you want to have a list of all of your desks and what their current data is, what neighbourhood they belong to, what the number is, the numbering scheme is for them, then list all desks report is useful for doing a quick inventory. And then the pre-booked desk report is quite useful for predicting the load on the office or who's going to be in the next period. So you could select dates in the future and optionally select for just a given floor, and you'll be able to download a sheet of who's expected in the office tomorrow or the next day up to the advanced booking period, which I think is the maximum of 2 months, and that depends on the policy that you set on the desk group. So that's some of the reports that you run out of the box. If there's specific reports that aren't included, then you can discuss those with your reseller, and that they'll bring those questions through to us, and we do craft some custom reports for certain customers on request. But yeah, thanks for your time and watching the video, and there'll be more snippets of certain functions, certain admin functions available on the support.floorsense.com.au website.